Hey guys! Today I want to do a brief showcase of the Ghostblade for the Male Slayer class. I'll be covering things like general playstyle, tips and tricks for some notable skills, talisman recommendations, some example rotations, and some gearing guidelines for endgame optimization. To start, Ghostblade is an incredibly mobile and powerful pure dealer, dealing physical percentage damage, meaning his damage scales with strength and physical attack. So you'll actually want to reinforce your weapon and not refine it. So let's just jump straight to the skills. First, I want to start by going over his 3 categories of skills. Starting with the first one, Swordsmanship Skills. So down this left-hand side, you'll see Phantom Slash, and then Spectral Thrust, Soul Strike, Spectral Eradication, and then further down here, Fiend Dance. These are his core swordsmanship skills. So to start, Phantom Slash is this multi-hit combo. Spectral Thrust is this stab. Soul Strike is this slam. Spectral Eradication is this big swing. And then Fiend Dance is this multi-hit combo as well, where you can also travel forward. Pretty cool. And these skills are performed by the Ghostblade himself. Next, I want to go through the Ghost skills. And each of these skills will have Ghost in their name. Starting with Single Strike, where you send out your Ghost forward. Quad Slash, which I have the Third Awakening version. And does a multi-hit combo there. And then Circle Cut, where the Ghost does 2 cleaves, dashing forward, and then targeted hit, where he will find the strongest enemy in range and perform a downward stab, and then Phantom Wind, where the Ghost will just travel forward doing multiple slashes in a big AoE. These can be cast just from the Ghostblade himself. You'll see an animation, but the Ghost is doing the damage. And this will be important a little bit later. Next, I want to go through his Dyad skills, so you'll see Soul Cross. If you just cast Soul Cross as is, from neutral, you'll actually summon the Ghost first, you'll shoot him out, and then you'll trade places. But if the Ghost is already out in the field and then you perform the skill, you'll actually cross, but stay on your individual axes. Next, we have Half Moon Slash. And this just looks like a normal draw sword cleave in tandem with the Ghost. However, if the Ghost is elsewhere on the map already, again, you will both perform Half Moon Slash together. That said, there can only be one instance of damage. So just because you and the Ghost are hitting the same enemy doesn't mean there'll be 2 instances. So for example, if I have him out here, and I'm all the way over here, you'll see that Ghost will hit him, and I will not, but the damage will be the same. And then finally we have Dyad Abyssal Punishment. This is actually a very nifty skill. So for example, if I have multiple enemies out in the room here, and use a skill, the Ghost will actually go around the room and gather all the enemies to me, and then I'll deliver a finishing blow. And the range for this thing is actually incredibly massive. These guys are off my map, and they've all come here. All the way over there? So this will not land. However, if you send your Ghost out over there, he will bring them to you. And then I want to talk about Freestyle, new Ghost Sword. So this doesn't fall under one category, but in fact falls under all 3. And by that, I mean, if you just cast this in neutral, you and the Ghost will cast it in tandem, like a Dyad skill. However, if you cast it while in the middle of another attack, it'll act like a Ghost skill with just the Ghost performing the attack. However, this version will actually do less damage. And then finally, if you cast it in Ghost Step, it'll be just a swordsmanship skill where you just dash forward. Which leads me into my next topic, Ghost Step, which is actually kind of tricky. Ghost Step puts you in this stance, and you'll see that I have these skills here, my Swordsmanship Skills, highlighted in blue. Normally, if I just perform the skill, I'll just dash forward like this, for a little bit of damage, as you can see. However, if I instead use a Swordsmanship skill, I will perform that skill while dashing, with much less animation time. So for example, Phantom Slash is normally this multi-hit combo, but instead if I dash through, all the multi-hits happen while I dash, or after I dash even. And Soul Strike is just a single hit, but if I Ghost Step it, it becomes a much longer range and much wider actually attack. And Spectral Thrust is actually kind of interesting. Normally, if you have a couple enemies here, oop, wrong ones. Spectral Thrust will actually slightly gather enemies onto the same axis as you, but if you Ghost Step it, now it increases your reach greatly, pushing and dragging along all enemies that it reaches onto the same axis. Very, very handy for just gathering a room up together. And then you have Special Eradication instead of just this long cleave. Now it becomes a dashing cleave. And also travels quite a bit ahead of you. Very cool. And then Fiend Dance, again, was this multi-hit combo, but with Ghost Step, it happens much more quickly. And generally speaking, this is the version you'll always be using until you get the Talisman. Now, so why is this important? So, as you can see, my Ghost skills are still highlighted. They're not grayed out. Ghost skills can all be cast in the middle of other animation. So my basic attacks, for example, with no further animation, right? The ghost will just get summoned. And this can happen during skills as well. And this adds a lot to the complexity of this class, because suddenly, not only are you just pressing skills one at a time, you're probably pressing multiple skills at a time. Now, for example, Ghost Step, because it dashes you forward, let's say you do Phantom Slash, and then you also want to use Phantom Wind with it. If you do Phantom Slash, and then Phantom Wind will not connect. So what you have to do is enter Ghost Step, press Phantom Wind, and then Phantom Slash. And there is a certain finesse to it. And it may take quite a bit of practice. But you'll get it down. And before I move on, I want to talk about Ghost Retracer. So this is actually not an attack ability, but what it does is it will transport you to your ghost location. And you can teleport to your ghost once per ghost skill, as well as Dyad Skills. And as you can see, by the white outline on my character, this actually gives me invulnerability frames. And these can be chained together. So for example, you could do like Mountainous Spiel with single strike into Ghost Retracer to get about a second of iframes. And one added mechanic is once you get your third awakening, you can actually use Ghost Retracer while knocked down as long as there's a ghost down somewhere. So for example, if I take out Horodin, who knocks me down with a shockwave, let's say I have a ghost over here, I can Ghost Retrace to safety. However, this version does have a cooldown of 7 seconds. So please keep that in mind. You cannot recover constantly to the same ghost or to any ghost repeatedly. And finally, we can move on to Talismans. Before I move on to the Holy Trinity of Talismans, I want to showcase a couple interesting ones. The Circle Cut Talisman will actually add a Twister effect that suctions enemies to its center, dealing multi-hit damage. This is actually an incredibly useful talisman to have for farming, as you can gather an entire room like this very easily. Like that. Very, very cool. Next, I actually want to talk about targeted hit. This is actually kind of interesting. If you perform targeted hit, it'll actually super hold the enemy and pin them to the floor. But if you read that talisman, it says the hold effect disappears with the ghost. What that means is, if you hold this enemy and then summon the ghost elsewhere, the hold will end. So if you want to do this, he's held for that entire duration, but as soon as you instead use a ghost, the hold releases. And that's it. Nothing too special about those. Surgical Cut's damage is actually pretty substantial. However, it is not nearly as good utility-wise as the three I'm about to show you. The Soul Strike Talisman is actually very unique in that it'll let you cancel into and out of other skills. So for example, if I perform Phantom Slash and I want to use Soul Strike, it'll very fluidly connect into Soul Strike. But also, you can use other skills out of Soul Strike whenever you want, as soon as it connects, very fluidly. And the great thing about this is, you can actually turn around as well. So for example, if I use Ghost Step Phantom Slash and I want to use Soul Strike, if I hold back or left, I can turn around and cancel into a Soul Strike that way as well. This talisman also reduces its cooldown, increases the range, the size, and increases the damage by a fair amount. This is just a great DPS talisman in general to have. Next, I'll actually talk about Spectral Eradication. This is actually just a range and damage increase normally, but if you read the first effect, negates Ghost Step cooldown if followed by the skill. What this means is, if you perform Spectral Eradication while in Ghost Step, you'll see that Ghost Step's cooldown is immediately available. It's already off cooldown. So you can do things like this, or even put a Soul Strike in there. And this, again, adds even more depth class. So you can do stuff like this, and just do a bunch of skills in such a short amount of time. And then finally, I want to talk about Fiend Dance. This is amazing. If you remember what Fiend Dance looked like before, now it is just the finishing slashes. The combo slashes are now removed, and that damage is basically just added onto the finisher. And this means you no longer have to use Ghost Step on Fiend Dance to reduce its animation. Now you can just cast it as is. It may as well just be Ghost Step already. So now you can exclusively use Ghost Step for Phantom Slash, Special Eradication, and Freestyle, New Ghost Sword. Meaning you can do things like this, and go through all of his skills in a flash. His other talismans I will quickly go over. Again, target hit is not bad, the hold can be useful, the damage is quite alright, the cooldown reduction is nice, not really recommended however. Phantom Wind is kind of not amazing, it doesn't really add much to the skill itself, it just creates the phantom away from you and pulls enemies towards you, but it's really not that great outside of farming. And then you have things like Abyssal Punishment, and a long time ago this used to be very, very powerful, but it has a long cooldown, long channeling, and the talisman actually adds another finisher to the skill, increasing the channeling of the skill. Not recommended for general use. Before I show you a rotation with these talismans, I'm going to show you a rotation without them so you can compare. And so for a 30-second rotation, just a couple things to note. You'll want to check your Ghost Step cooldown. It's 4.8 seconds for me. Again, no talismans, no cooldown reduction whatsoever, no gear, just a weapon. And then you have Phantom Slash also at 4.8 seconds. Soul Strike at 11.4 seconds, Half Moon Slash at 14.3 seconds, Target Hit and Circle Cut at 19 seconds each, which means I can potentially get 3 Half Moon Slashes, multiple Phantom Slashes, probably with Ghost Step sometimes, and then Soul Strike I can get at least 3 in as well. But Eradication, Fiend Dance, Phantom Wind, Freestyle, I can only use once each. But mostly I will be juggling Ghost Step's cooldown and fitting in other skills and awakenings in between that. So it'll look something like this. I missed a couple of skills there, but it's fine. You can see that new Ghost Sword is actually very, very strong. 3 Half Moon Slashes did plenty of damage. I do have Half Moon Slash TP maxed. Soul Strike, 3 uses did plenty of damage as well. 1 Fiend Dance did quite a bit of damage. Eradication, quite a bit of damage. I'm gonna skip this for now. Target Hit, pretty decent. Phantom Wind, not a lot. And then Phantom Slashes here, 62,000, and this looks fairly weak with 6 uses. But if you look at his passives, you'll see that Ultimate Phantom Slash adds additional damage to the original Phantom Slash. So this passive here is still the same skill. So you actually want to add these together. That's 134,000 damage. Suddenly you realize Phantom Slash is actually above new Ghost Sword in this rotation. Phantom Slash is actually one of your highest DPS tools in your kit. I highly recommend you master its use, both with and without Ghost Step. And then just some filler skills here, that's fine. Not too complicated, but timing your skills in your rotation is key, and spacing out your Ghost Step usages with Half Moon Slash and Soul Strike in between everything, very, very important. But with Talismans, it kind of becomes a little bit more complicated, because now you are casting more skills more quickly, and now with Talismans and some amount of gear, I am using Dust Traveler Mythic with a full 3-piece set, so I get about 19% cooldown reduction. I'm using Taiji Emperor's Sword on Yang Energy, but to counter the speed penalty, I am also using Roto's 3-piece. And I will also give myself 60% speed and use my potions here with a Mind Stem. And a couple things to note with this rotation now is that Eradication and Fiend Dance are both under 30 seconds, and I can very easily use both of these skills, as well as Phantom Wind twice in the rotation. Half Moon Slash, I can theoretically land 4 of these, but I don't think I'll be able to. It becomes very, very tight. Circle Cut, Target Hit, I can also potentially use 3 times in rotation. Soul Strike, I'll be able to use at least 4 or 5 times in rotation, probably 5. And that's about it. But also, Phantom Slash has a very low cooldown of 3 seconds right now for me. And Ghost Step also has 3 seconds. This is going to be a very, very busy rotation. And basically, I'll be beginning my rotation with a Half Moon Slash, and then immediately with Ghost Step, Phantom Wind, Eradication, Soul Strike, Fiend Dance, Target Hit, and then all of these. It'll be a mess. So, let me show you what it might look like. Good enough. So you'll see 2 Fiend Dances did an enormous amount of damage, 2 Spectral Eradications, a decent amount here, 4 Soul Strikes, 54 million damage, great, 2 Phantom Winds, pretty good, 4 Half Moon Slashers, pretty good, new Ghost Sword, decent amount of damage here, and then of course Phantom Slash, 27 plus 23, that's about 50 million damage, that's right around here, very, very high. Targeted hit, I think I missed, yeah, I did not use it the 3rd time because I forgot, or just didn't have enough time to use it. Not bad. Critical cut, also not bad. But as you can see, that rotation was fairly tight. And it is quite hard. It took me a couple tries to get right. Quote unquote right. But that is one facet of this class that I really do enjoy. He is very challenging to master, and it's kind of fun. Next, we'll move on to gear guidelines. For weapons, so katana is your only choice because you do have a katana mastery, so your choices are Taiji Emperor's Sword or Avant-Garde. So Taiji Emperor's Sword is generally the preferred weapon as it has the highest damage output of almost any weapon in the game because of Yang energy. However, it does give you a massive speed penalty and you'll be relatively slow unless you have a lot of speed in your gear setup. On the other hand, Avant-Garde is the opposite. It gives you a speed bonus, both attack speed and movement speed. And this is actually a very, very viable weapon. You don't have to use Taiji. That said, if you have the right setup, Taiji Emperor's Sword's penalty can be offset by things like Rhodos, which will give you a ramping up attack speed buff every time you hit an enemy. And as you spend more time dashing, you'll actually gain more movement speed with Rhodos, and this is very, very nice. That said, Ghostblade does have a lot of movement options like Ghost Step and also Ghost Retracer with Single Strike. And he does have quite a bit of iframes with, again, Ghost Retracer and also Abyssal Punishment. Also later on, you'll gain access to Osma Epics, specifically Barius. The Barius Necklace will give you 18% attack speed, and the Magic Stone will give you 18% movement speed. So this is a great way to, again, further offset the penalty from Yang energy. I would say Barius and Rhodos is a little bit overkill. Once you get Barius, you can probably just completely replace Rhodos and get either Gatekeeper if you already have cooldown reduction in your setup, especially if you have Dawn, or you can also use Nex for just raw damage and no utility. It'll be fairly cheaper than Gatekeeper because you can just use dual or single elemental damage enchants. And of course you can also get Assassin if you don't already have any cooldown reduction, or maybe you only have a little bit of cooldown reduction and would like some more. That aside, his awakenings are actually quite strong. That said, I would not recommend using Roxy unless it's the only set available to you. Eventually I would probably look for a sustained damage setup you can use instead. Crossroads is also a very good option. He does have, again, strong talismans like Soul Strike and Fiend Dance. I would say Spectral Eradication's DPS is quite a bit lower and is not worth putting on slot 2, so Fiend Dance is the way to go. And Crossroads will also give quite a bit of speed, and especially if you pair that with Annunciation and maybe even Dawn, that'll almost completely negate Taiji's speed penalty. And that's about it. To recap, the Ghostblade is an extremely flexible DPS class with decent utility, though it can be complicated to learn and relatively difficult to master. His incredibly fast-paced playstyle and large array of mobility options do make him very engaging to play, however, so if you're into that sort of thing, please give him a shot. Maybe you'll end up liking him as much as I do. If you have any questions regarding this class, please drop a comment below. You can also join my Discord server, which I'll leave a link to below as well. And you can catch me live on Twitch if you'd like to ask me anything directly. I stream almost every day, generally after 5 PM Pacific, so I hope to see you there. Otherwise, have a good one. Cheers, guys.